Welcome back, everyone. Ready to dive into another fascinating topic. Today, we're tackling those creativity myths we've all heard a time or two, the one that might be holding us back without us even realizing it.
It's funny how these myths have really become ingrained in how we think about creativity. Like we're all just waiting for that lightning bolt of inspiration to strike.
Absolutely. And that's where How to Fly a Horse by Kevin Ashton comes in. It really flips the script on how we view creativity. This book shows us that it's not some magical ability only a lucky few possess. It's a process, a journey that's open to all of us.
And what I love about this book is how it uses these captivating stories from history to make its point. Like, for example, have you ever heard of Edmund Albius?
I have to admit I hadn't before reading this. What an amazing story.
Right. Here's a young man enslaved in the 1800s, and he manages to figure out how to hand pollinate vanilla orchids, something that no one else had been able to do.
It really makes you think, how many other incredible minds have been overlooked or forgotten throughout history simply because of the circumstances they were born into? And it makes you wonder what kind of creative potential is hidden within each of us, just waiting for the chance to be unleashed.
It's an incredibly powerful thought. And the book even delves into how the idea of authorship, as we understand it today, didn't really exist until the Renaissance. Before then, the focus wasn't so much on the individual creator.
That's incredible. It's as if that period in history gave birth to this myth of the lone genius that we're still grappling with today.
It's a pervasive myth, for sure, and you see it pop up all the time when you hear about inventions or big discoveries. These tales of sudden, almost magical moments of
From the
insight.
eureka
Yeah.
moment, right? Like that's the only thing that matters.
Exactly. But How to Fly a Horse reminds us that while these stories are exciting, they often don't tell the whole story. The reality of creation is usually a lot more, well, normal. It's a gradual
It's
process.
about those steps along the way, not just the giant leaps. And you know what? I find that incredibly encouraging. It makes the whole idea of being creative feel much more attainable.
I agree. And there are so many great examples that demonstrate this. Let's take Wassily Kandinsky, the famous abstract painter. His paintings might seem spontaneous, but when you really look at them,
You realize there's all this meticulous planning and tons of sketches behind those canvases. It reminds me of that quote by Michelangelo where he said, if people knew how much work went into his art, it wouldn't seem so effortless.
exactly. It's about the dedication and persistence, the sheer amount of work that often gets overlooked.
And this is where How to Fly a Horse gets really fascinating. Because it doesn't just tear down these myths, it gives us a more empowering way to think about creativity. In fact, Ashton points out that almost as many Americans received patents in 2011 as attended NASCAR races. Can you believe that?
It's a mind-boggling number, isn't it? And it really throws a wrench in that idea that only a select few are actually creative.
Absolutely.
Right.
Imagine the possibilities if we all embraced those everyday moments of ingenuity, those small acts of creation that we already do without even realizing it. It's like unlocking this hidden potential within ourselves. Now, the question is, how do we do that? Well, that's where we'll pick up in the next part of our deep dive, where we'll explore the surprising role of failure in the creative process. So we want to unlock our creative potential, right? But I feel like there's this big roadblock in the way. Fear. Fear of failing. But How to Fly a Horse actually wants us to look at failure totally differently. Ashton says it's not the enemy of creativity, it's like this secret weapon.
That's a really different way of looking at it, for sure. We're basically trained from the get-go to avoid failing, like it's a bad thing. But he's saying it's essential if you want to create something new.
It's a total mind shift. And he tells this story that honestly just blew me away. It's about James Dyson. You know, the guy behind those Dyson vacuums.
Oh yeah, talk about perseverance. Did you know that he built over 5,000 prototypes before he got it right?
Over 5,000. I think I would have given up after 100, maybe even 10. Would you have kept going that long?
5,000 tries does sound like a lot, but think of it this way. Every single prototype, even the ones that didn't work, those were giving him crucial information.
It's like that famous Thomas Edison quote about the light bulb, right? I haven't failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work.
Exactly. Each mistake, each time you have to change course, it gets you closer to the answer. But to really work this way, you need the right mindset.
And that leads us right into another super interesting point from the book, the importance of having a beginner's mind.
And the really cool part here is how Ashton brings up this idea of inattentional blindness. It's like Our brains filter out stuff that seems irrelevant so we could be missing out on some breakthrough idea without even realizing it.
It's like that experiment where people are watching a basketball game, so focused on counting passes that they totally miss this guy in a gorilla suit walking right through the middle of it. We're literally blind to anything we're not paying attention to.
Precisely. And this is so relevant to how we approach creativity, too. If we're stuck in one way of thinking, stuck in our old ideas, we're basically putting blinders on ourselves.
Okay, so how do we actually do that? How do we get rid of the blinders and see things with a beginner's mind?
Ashton talks about Shunryu Suzuki, who was a Zen Buddhist teacher. Suzuki was all about approaching every experience with a sense of openness and curiosity, like it was the very first time you'd ever encountered it.
It's like becoming a kid again. Everything is new and exciting.
Yes, kids are so creative, and it's that sense of wonder that fuels it. But it's like, somewhere along the way, we lose that.
We start to care too much about what other people think, or we're afraid of not being good enough.
And that takes us to another big creativity killer, constantly needing validation from other people.
That really resonated with me. Ashton compares Woody Allen, who pretty much ignores what critics say, to artists who are constantly chasing awards and recognition. It makes you wonder, are those external rewards actually helping them be more creative, or are they holding them back?
It's definitely something to think about. And there's even research showing that external rewards can make people perform worse on tasks that need creativity.
It seems counterintuitive, but maybe that need for outside approval blocks us from reaching our true potential.
It really comes down to what motivates you. Are you creating to please others or to satisfy some kind of inner drive?
And that brings us to the heart of it, passion. And that's where we're headed in the final part of our deep dive. We'll be exploring how passion can be both incredibly powerful, but also a bit dangerous on the creative journey. So we've all heard it right. Follow your passion. Like that's the secret to a happy, successful life. But how to fly a horse makes this really interesting point about passion. It's powerful, yeah, but it can also be kind of dangerous if you're not careful.
Yeah, it's like anything else. Too much of a good thing can be, well, too much. And Ashton uses the story of Daquan Lawrence to show us how this works in real life. He was this young guy who found his voice through rap music.
His story is really incredible. I mean, he was stuck in this really negative cycle, and then through music, he found this way to process everything, to turn it into something positive.
And there are so many stories like his. People who find purpose and even healing through art, through music, through writing. It's like these things give us an outlet, a way to deal with all those big emotions and actually connect with other people.
It makes you realize how important it is for everyone, but especially young people, to have creative outlets. And there are some amazing organizations out there doing this work, like Music is the Answer. They use music to empower kids, to help them create positive change.
It's about taking all that energy, all that passion, and giving it a direction. And this applies to way more than just music. Imagine if everyone could tap into their passions and use that to fuel their creativity, to come up with new ideas to make the world a better place.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into how to fly a horse, what are the big takeaways here? What can we take with us to help us on our own creative journeys?
I think the biggest thing is that we are all capable of so much more than we realize. This book really drives that home. Creativity isn't reserved for a select few. It's a process that anyone can embrace.
It's about taking those small steps, those little actions every day that will eventually lead to something amazing. It's about not being afraid to fail, because even our mistakes can teach us something valuable.
And maybe most importantly, it's about connecting with that thing that lights you up inside, that passion. It's what fuels our creativity and pushes us to bring something new and meaningful into the world.
I love that. So as we sign off today, I want to leave you with this question. What would you create if you knew you couldn't fail? What dreams would you chase if you could silence that inner critic? What would you bring into the world if you embrace this whole messy, exciting journey of creativity?
Don't wait for permission. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. Just start creating.
That's such great advice. Until next time, everyone, keep those creative sparks flying.